everybody understands that affordability is an issue. Now, there's this big debate in politics about the terminology. Do you say affordability? Even President Trump himself has oscillated between how he's great for affordability to it's a made up term by people who don't like him. Here's the thing. Yes, things are more expensive. Yes, our economist friends, you can put up all the charts in the world about how wage growth has been really good over the last few years. But also, everything's more expensive. And it's not just inflation and policy stuff. Housing's more expensive, food's more expensive, everything's more expensive. Inflation's part of it. Natural course of events in economics is part of it. Monetary policy is part of it. It's a big, complicated thing on why all these things is. But one of the things we all have learned apparently is not very many people know how to talk about this. And part of the thing about affordability, and I'm coming at this from the perspective of somebody who's had a unique career path, number one. Number two is my children are all young adults now. The youngest is getting ready to go off to college next week. And they have diverse backgrounds. So I've been dealing with young adults and young people going in the market, which is kind of the crux of this argument is like young people leaving college. What are they going to do? I've been kind of doing this in real life for a while on top of talking heading and doing policy stuff and writing and talking about it. So I just want to do a little perspective on some of this. I think expectations, the old skit, lowered expectations. That's one of those things that doesn't get factored into this enough. What do people expect out of life? What do they put in expecting to get that? And do they get it? The higher education system is in an absolute crisis, and I believe is in for a very hard fall because what it costs to get higher education is not worth what a lot of folks are getting out of it. And a lot of the folks that spend a lot of money on higher education are trying to find their way. I am not against higher education. My youngest daughter is going to a very, very well-known, prestigious school. It is a top 5 school on the planet in her chosen field. She earned a very heavy scholarship to do that. She has been very smart with her own money, saved it up. She's had a high yield savings account for years. And she's going to take student loans and she's going to do grants and she's using her VA benefits she gets because of me and a whole conglomeration of things, plus some help from family, plus some help from me and her mother. So there's all these things that go into it. It's extraordinarily expensive. Even with her heavy scholarship, even with all the help she's getting, there's going to be a massive cost involved in it. And we had to have those conversations like, is it worth it for you to go into debt and to spend your savings and all this for what this institution is going to provide you and to go into this career field? And she had the logical argument. And after digging into it, I can't tell her it's not worth it. It's expensive. She's going to pay for it. She's going to have debts to match up. But I can't tell her it's not worth it for what she has planned for her life and what she wants to try to do. That's a career path. She decided to do it. I have another child that's currently at Job Corps right now, going through trade school after having some difficulties. And I'm very, very proud. In fact, sent me pictures this morning where they're doing some painting and scraping and trade school and stuff. It's great stuff. They're happy. I'm happy. Couldn't be prouder. Or as she jokes, I'll probably be making more money than them because I've got to trade and they've got to go to school, which is, a joke, but not too far from the truth. I have another daughter. Is finishing up an online degree right now. In fact, I just got the paperwork for her GI benefits. She's going online. She helps take care of my parents, and she's working at the state park. She's a state employee. Very proud of her. Oldest kid is working, already graduated college, already married, getting ready to have a grandbaby here any day now, and working on top of that. Working mom. Pretty cool stuff. She graduated college. Not really. I mean, she did on paper, but she was the generation COVID hit that March and she didn't get a college graduation. And in fact, because she was doing an education degree, they didn't have a method to graduate them because they couldn't do student teaching and there's no other way. They had to hybrid this thing. It was a very upsetting and confusing time. That was her path. I've always been very, I don't know the term you want to use, laissez-faire, egalitarian, some big fancy term somewhere. You find one. With my children's paths to careers because every kid's different. Expectations is important though. And I've always tried to talk to them expectations. When my kid went to trade school, I was like, this is the option that's best for you right now. Your expectation is just go do it, get through it. It'll set you up for whatever comes next. Kids in college, same thing. Like, look, you're nobody going to hand you a job. You got to have skill sets. My father was really good about managing my expectations. He refused to let me go to the big college. I always wanted to go to like WVU or somewhere. He's like, "You're not going. I'm not paying for it. You're not mature enough to handle it." He was right. He said, "You can go to this smaller school. We'll see how it goes. I'll help you. I'll support you. If you show you're good at this little thing, then we'll go from there." Newsflash, folks, I wasn't good at it. I was an idiot. I was a punk kid. Didn't do well. Didn't last very long. And my career path started there with my own mistakes. And I ended up having a bit of a falling out with my dad, but had to eat a little humble pie. Went and got that hourly job at Walmart. Got to move back home, so at least I wasn't sleeping in the blazer. And we started rebuilding life. So went back to community college, Glenville Extension in Summersville at the time. Now it's New River Community College. Started taking classes again and learned how to enjoy learning again and making my 511 or whatever it was at Walmart. Cause I don't remember what I started with, but I remember I got a pay bump to 531 an hour because I was working swing shifts. So I thought I was rich. So chicken voila every night and money in the bank account. That's high living, right? And I did that for a while. And then I was like, I got to make a move here. This is not what I want to do with my life. Nothing wrong with it. I enjoyed working at Walmart, but I was like, I'm not really gaining anything here. And that's when I enlisted and went in the military. And that changed my life. And then that led to my military career, which led to a civilian career, which led to not being able to really work a real job anymore, which led me to doing media. And here we are talking as we are right now. This is career 4/C plan B, option 4 of my career. And I've tried to keep that with my kids is like, you don't know where your careers are going. So especially when you're young, especially when you go into higher education, you have to give yourself options. Think of it as, okay, this is what I want to do, but is it communicable to other things to give me options going forward? Like I told the kid in trade school, it's like the first thing you do, you may not really like it, but it's a tool in your toolkit that may get you to the next thing. So just go ahead and learn it because certification, there's nothing wrong with that. Told my daughter working at the state park, I'm like, that's a state job. That's on your resume forever. Once you're in those systems, you're always in that system. That's a good thing to have. Do that. Same thing with the oldest kid. She graduated college. She didn't immediately go into education. She ended up working at a doctor's office, but she was able to do that and manage a doctor's office because of her degree. So it gives you options. These things are very important going forward. And as I watch this debate raging online, mostly by people that don't really have a lot of skin in the game, or they're just upset, or they don't see past their own stuff, I try to keep all those things in mind. I don't think it's helpful politically for people to just go, well, people just need to learn to be better with their money. Yeah, that's true, but it also cost Joe Biden his presidency, and the Trump administration is doing the same thing. Where the economy is really great, promise. I know you don't feel it, but it's really great. That's not going to work. You're going to get punished in the midterms and probably 2028 for it because people can joke about vibes and people can joke about feels, but they're real, and that's how people operate. It's expensive out there. I was just talking to a friend of mine, uh, and we were joking about it would be really great if we could all get together. And the first part of it is like, well, we're in 3 very different parts of the world. Number one, then number two is we got to find a time where we can all afford it. Just to cut because travel is expensive. I got this trip to New York where I'm taking my kid to college. Very expensive trip. Parking in New York is ridiculous. That's another thing for another day, and good reason not to live in a city. But things are more expensive. That's real to people, and it costs more. And especially post COVID, people are very aware of the fragility of the economy and the fragility of their jobs. One thing that came out of COVID is people understanding that whatever their normal is, it can end at any given moment. Now, you should have that kind of survivalist mindset all the time, but a lot of people didn't. And COVID did it to them. And it frankly scared a lot of people. And that's still in people's minds. So when there's economic uncertainty now, it's even more heightened because they know what it looks like when you can't go to work, or you can't go to the school, or you can't go to the grocery store, you can't do this, or you can't do that, and your paycheck's in doubt, and go on and go on and so forth. If you've never been somebody that's been laid off, I have. It's horrible. It's a rotten feeling when you get that phone call, especially on a Monday, which, don't do that. Call people on Fridays. It's awful if you get laid off or lose your job. It's nothing to joke about. It's not a policy thing. And then I think about too, when I was doing hiring, Um, Talking about expectations. Look, this is God, 12, 13 years ago now when I was still working and I was doing hiring. And even back then, we had, and was a major national corporation at the time that I was working for, and they were telling us and giving us guidelines like, look, we were hiring entry level management people. That's who I was interviewing. And they were giving us the guidance like, look, the degree is not really an indicator of whether we want to hire them or not. We want to look at work history. We want to look at work ethic. We want to look at their circumstances, things like this, because the degree really didn't say anything. And this is 12, 13, 14 years ago that this was an issue with major companies, and it's only gotten worse since. One of the things about degrees and college degrees, and I'm not against them. I've been, a college student on and off pretty much all my life. I'm a big fan of education. I push my children to get education. But the degree in and of itself is a part of what's going on. And I'm going to borrow a rant my father, who was a career educator, very credentialed, multiple advanced degrees. And some of those degrees were in things like curriculum and administration. Like, he thinks about this stuff. One of the things he'd always say is that we've built this system to pipeline kids into higher education without really validating why they need to do that, except to keep higher education going. And that's what's catching up with people. So when you talk about affordability and young people going in and out of the systems, and you talk about higher education, whether it's worth it or not, the answer is always going to be it depends. Now, I know there's this total all out warfare on higher ed, especially from the right. It's all bad, it's all woke, all this nonsense. No, it's not. There's lots of value in a liberal education, liberal arts education. A lot of value. I relearned how to learning at community college, taking those liberal arts types classes. In fact, one of the most important classes I ever took in my whole life was actually music appreciation, believe it or not. And it wasn't because it was music, and it wasn't because of classes, because of who was teaching it. And the person that was teaching it really got me to think about some important life stuff at that very critical moment. And we were doing some essay stuff and things like that. And he made me do some self-reflecting that changed how I did academics broadly. You wouldn't think of that in a music appreciation class, but if I didn't take that class, I wouldn't have met that teacher, and that teacher wouldn't have challenged me, and I wouldn't have thought of those things. And it's one of those things where I started questioning my place in life. Like, I think I can do better. I think I need to make a move. That all came from that class that I didn't think I was going to get anything out of other than show up, write some stuff, do your thing, get your C, and get out of there. And it turned out to be really important. So there's a great value in liberal arts education. But when you're talking about the affordability piece, you have to add in the education piece, and that people have to pay too much to try to get that shortcut in life. Because that rant that I talked about my dad having, that's a big part of it. There's a lot of people who, for multiple generations, especially my generation, I'm 46 now, so I'm kind of the youngest of the Xers, just missed the millennials, and my parents were boomers. The thing with my mom's and dad's generation, where they were the first generation to go to college, and they were the first generation to not be dirt floor poor, and those two things are very much connected. My dad went to a one-room schoolhouse till the 8th grade. And then the jump to his son pretty much doing almost all his schooling online, and his grandchildren having the diverse educational backgrounds they have. That's a part of this story, and here's why. The promise of higher education post World War II was always that getting a degree, a higher education degree, was going to be this shortcut into wealth and success. It's not always pitched exactly like that, but that's the truth. It was always told to kids, if you don't go to college, you're not going to get this shortcut to wealth and success and the middle class and up and open the doors and all that. You had to go get a college degree to do that. That's not necessarily true, of course. There's examples of folks not. If you just want to make money, the trades are making a lot more money than a lot of entry level degreed, credentialed things are right now. Sometimes much more money. It just depends. These things are things to ponder on. And one of the things with this affordability debate is I keep that perspective in mind. I keep that perspective in mind because people want to, disconnect it. There's always the saying of, well, I want my kids to get more than I had. I think on this, like, okay, do I have more than my dad had and my mom and dad had? My dad was very frugal with his money. He was very good about saving his money. He would joke about being a teacher. He's like, where else can I work 10 months out of the year, get weekends and holidays, the summer off, really good benefits, and do something that matters and live in the country? That was what was important to him. And he always had a second job on top of it, always, always. He was a bivocational pastor. Before I was born, he ran Parks and Recs, he coached, he did all these other things, always had an extra job. Hardworking man that kept all his money and has had a very comfortable life because of it, which means I had a pretty good life growing up. We weren't rich or anything, but we were never wanting for anything. We didn't miss any meals. We got to do some pretty cool trips and stuff. But because my dad was smart with his money, we didn't spend a lot of money on a lot of stuff. He saved it and then spent it when it was important. So, do I have more than my mom and dad have? In some ways, I've had a very different life. My mom and dad went to college on federal grants that said you had to stay in West Virginia and become teachers, which was fine by them. And they've basically stayed there. Now they've traveled the world and things like that. It's not like they've been, cloistered, but they stayed in one place. I went in the military, which means I've been all over the world. My children have moved a lot. In fact, the two youngest children, one of the prime things the last few years was, get them through school without moving them because the two oldest kids had to move a lot, including back and forth overseas. So is that a better life or not as good a life? Well, financially on paper, I've probably made more money than my mom and dad have and certainly had a more diverse lifestyle, but is it better? Well, that's in the eye of the beholder. What do you want? Are my kids going to get a better life than I had? I hope so. They're on the path to doing that. Um, One's already successfully married, getting ready to have a kid, very financially secure, good guy, lives in a Rockwell painting, you know, federal style house with a flag on the porch, baseball field across the street in a small town in Ohio. Like, it's a Rockwell painting. It's ridiculous. They're doing good. My kid that's going to the fancy school, I have high hopes for her. My kid in trade school, I couldn't be more proud of. Has overcome a lot of things in life and now has her life together. I got high hopes for her. And my other daughter, who I love dearly and is kind of my West Virginian of the bunch, natural West Virginian, got high hopes for her, doing outstanding. I think they're going to have a better life than me. But with this affordability thing, I think they're going to have a very different country and society than I had growing up in the 80s and 90s. Being my early, my 20s and 30s being the GWAT era and being dominated with military service and that sort of thing. They've seen me with my health struggles over the last few years and now doing media, which gives me a different perspective on things. I think they're going to have a very different country. They have a country where the post World War II homogeny of America has kind of gone away now, and we're going through a process where America is going to change. And there's people that don't want it to change in the way it's going to change, whether they like it or not. We are in an era where everybody gets a voice, which means people that have really ugly, vile voices with really vile, ugly thoughts have more platform than they've ever had before. And you have to deal with that. They're dealing with a political environment which has this incestuous relationship with money. Not that there's ever been politics without money. That's Pollyannish. Or get the money out of politics, people say, so they can get money into politics. That's all nonsense. But it is a little different now where we just have open, rampant corruption. And it's not a matter of stopping corruption. It's a matter of, well, my side's corruption is fragrant and wonderful and righteous, and your side's corruption is horrible and evil, and you should be shot in the street for it. That's the kind of stupidity we have to deal with. We have a country where the political parties don't seem to have any control over the type of candidates they have, and they don't particularly care as long as they win. We have a society that should have long ago put down things like bigotry and prejudices, but for some reason we've decided that we need to relitigate that again. And there's a lot of people failing that test of bigotry and prejudices. We have a long history. Uh, throughout human history, but especially American history, we know what's right and wrong. You either are on the right side of that or you're not. And if you're not, it's your own fault at this point. You can't claim ignorance because you have these things in your hand that give you the whole depth and breadth of history. You should be able to figure out what's right and what's not by this point. And we have legit structural issues. There's demographic challenges, there's economic challenges. There's some real flaws in our system of government that need addressed. How do you deal with declining areas rurally while still being fair to economic growth in places that are growing great? What are you going to do about the Western water crisis? That's one that's not getting a lot of pull, but it's the oldest governing problem that we have known to man. We have that stuff etched on stones, fights over water rights. Some of the earliest laws we have over water rights. That's boiling out west. Nobody seems to want to talk about it. It's coming. You might want to deal with that. And we want to talk about ideologies and political parties, and we have structural problems in our country that need dealt with. You're gonna have to do something about entitlements. You're gonna have to do something about Social Security because that's written in the law that those up charges are coming, whether you do it or not. You better do something quick. We are a deeply unserious people as Americans right now. Part of it's because we've been so wealthy and blessed. Most of us, we have our poor, but as a whole, we are just about the most prosperous, blessed people on earth, and we tend to want to create problems to give ourselves challenges instead of solving the problems we actually have. Does that play into affordability? I think it does. I think it greatly does. I think as both a citizen who's, late in middle age now, and as a father of young adults, soon to be a grandfather, and as a talking head who covers this and writes about it and has been doing media for about 10 years now. I have a couple of thoughts on this affordability thing that I think need wider context. And they go as follows. The number one thing is your perception is everything when it comes to talking about economics. If you're middle class, everything is viewed through that lens. If you're working class or poor or lower, everything comes through that lens. If you're very well to do, everything comes through that lens. Class is one of those things that really filters how you see the world. We're seeing it in elections heavily, where the middle class and up, because that also is the entry level donor class. That's the swing voters everybody's out to get. They don't call them that and they don't talk about it in money terms, but that's the truth. If you're not middle class and up, you're probably not donating politically. So they get the way. They're also the people with the most anxiety because they really want to go up and they have a proficiency to be able to go down quick. So that, skews your view. If you've never had money, if you've always been working poor or disabled or whatever the case may be, and you've just never had any money either through your own fault or not your own fault, you see government a different way. You see government a different way. You see other people a different way. You see people with money a different way. I've known exceptionally wealthy people who are some of the most humblest, best people I've ever met. I've met poor people who are some of the most arrogant, awful people I've ever met, ungenerous, and vice versa, and everything in between. Rich people get a bad rap, sometimes justifiably, but poor people don't hire folks, is the old saying, and that's true. But it's just railing against rich people fix anything? No. Is letting rich people have an oligarchy where they run everything good either? No, that's not good either. But we don't want to talk about it in those terms. So the affordability thing is very much based on perception. The other thing that I think is important to bring up is it's also based on your knowledge intake and your news intake. You are what you watch on your phone. We used to say you are what you eat, but you, me, everybody, you have 100% control over your news intake now. It's not the old days where there was just a couple networks or there's a few newspapers or people control the flow of information. That's gone. You have 100% control over the intake of information that you get on a daily basis about the world. You can control all of it through your phone, your screen, whatever, your podcasts, your audio, your visual. You can screen it. I have very tight controls on my social media, who I do and do not see. I mute liberally because I just don't want some of that garbage in my brain. There's enough drama and brain damage and mess in there already. There's just a lot of the grifters. I've just cut it out because I don't need to see it. I already know what they're saying. Just cut that stuff out. So if your news feed is funneling you into certain things all the time, the only person to blame is you. So part of this affordability economic discussion starts with knowledge, and you're responsible for your own knowledge now because you have the power in your hand with a phone. I'm holding my phone up, you podcast folks, if you're not watching on video on herdtailmedia.com or the YouTube channel. Holding my phone up. Look, we can use these to get whatever we want. You're responsible for your own knowledge. And then the other one of this is, besides the perspective, besides the knowledge and news media intake, we're doing a really poor job of accountability. And I know that's a buzzword that we just abuse. Are you holding yourself, your family accountable so that you can hold your local government and community accountable so that we can hold our state and federal governments accountable? Accountability is more of an environment than an operational theory. If you don't have an environment of accountability, you know this from being in the military or being in a really good, healthy corporate structure, a good school setting, or a good work setting, or a good family setting. Healthy accountability is an environment where it sustains itself. We don't have that right now. We have a lot of point and click. We got a lot of yell. We got a lot of silliness. So those are the things to think about on that. Anyway, thoughts on accountability. I think we're doing a bad job of it. Thoughts on knowledge. I think we're doing a bad job of that. And thoughts on perspective. I think we're doing a bad job on that. So before we start arguing about $20 burritos, maybe we can take those three things and do a better job on everything so that when the $20 burrito thing pops up, we're a little bit more well equipped for it. Because number one, I don't like Chipotle anyway. There's not a single thing on that menu I want to eat. Number two is don't eat $20 burritos. That's a lifestyle choice. You don't need to spend that much money anyway. I rarely DoorDash anything. You know me, I like to cook at home. Cook at home. If you don't know how to cook a burrito at home, call me, DM me something. I'll teach you how to do it on the cheap. But mostly just don't eat Chipotle anyway. Go to Waffle House as God intended. I hope you're well. I hope you're well fed. Talk to you later for more Hurt Tale.